Okay, Buber, part one. All right, so what I want to do with us today is just look mostly at the distinction between the IU and the I-IT, because this is fundamental to understand the rest of the book. So we'll look at this in detail. And this is where I will also say a few words on on Buber's specific philosophical style, right? Like I was arguing last time, I haven't argued, I will today. Buber is not just a mystic, he's not just a poet, he's also a philosopher. And he writes like one, but we have to understand his philosophical language, right? So I'm gonna talk about that at the conclusion of this distinction we're gonna look at. Okay, so turn to 55. 54 and 55. Everybody there, put your hand in the screen. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the top paragraph, the small paragraph on the you. There's several descriptions. And this is where, right, we're going to go a little deeper than Kant, right? Remember, Buber has the same, he starts where Kant ends, right? Kant has just made the distinction, remember, he has talked about human beings as being ends and not means. And Kant has mostly focused on the attitude of respect, which is to abstain from using someone, right? You respect someone, make sure you write this down because this is foundational for Buber, right? The sign that you respect someone is when you abstain from using them. In other words, you might have, right? We according to Kant, remember, our attitude is in general, right? Very utilitarian, right? Everything should be of use to us, right? And we tend to treat people the same way. And Kant is saying the moment you resist that urge is the moment you are revealing that person as a person, right? And not just as an object, right? You are respecting them. So Buber starts right there, but he's going to go deeper. He's going to add components to the IU. He's going to go into the deeper layers of the you, by which he means the human being, right? Okay. So let's go first. So it, we know already. I-it is a relationship with an it, that is to say an object, right? Which we can either use or discard. That's our relationships with objects, right? We use them, and when we're done, we discard them. Sadly, it's also the way we treat people, right? Which is why Buber has to write this book to help us perhaps adopt a different approach, right? Okay, so let's go to top of 55. I'm gonna read a few lines and we're gonna try as a class to interpret together, right? What each of these means. What does it evoke to you, some of these sentences? Okay, so first of all, he starts on page 55, the top, whoever says you does not have something for his object. Okay, what is he saying there? Who can translate this sentence for the class? What does it mean that you don't have something for an object? Cosmidis, go ahead.
It means that you're not using that person, you're not objectifying them, you're just appreciating them as an individual.
Okay, very good, right? This is where he starts off where Kant ends, like I told you, right? This is Kant, right? If you're saying you to someone, right? If you're addressing someone as a you, if you're choosing to encounter them as a you are in a way refusing to see them as an object. That's exactly where Kant ended, right? In other words, what does that mean? You abstain from using, you don't discard, right? So in your relationships, when you're tempted to use someone who has no other value for you except that use they have for you, right? When you're tempted to befriend that person for their use or to be with that person romantically for what they can bring you without any other interests, right? Or when we're tempted to discard someone, like a friend who betrayed us or a beloved who is, acting out, same thing, right? The moment you step back and resist the urge either to use or to discard, boom, you're revealing the dimension of the you. You're revealing that person as a you, right? And not as an it, okay? Keep in mind what I just said, you are revealing them. This is important. I'm gonna come back to that. Okay, so this one is clear, right? Easy. I mean, easy to understand, not easy to do, right? It's not easy sometimes when you want to benefit from what someone has to offer, but you know is you're using them, right? And you choose, like Kant said, the good over happiness, right? Okay, likewise, discarding, right? We're tempted, but we talked about this. Okay, now here's where we go deeper now with Buber, and this is where things get interesting. This very interesting quote where he says, the you has no borders, right? 4 lines down. The you has no borders. So let's try and interpret. There's several ways to see this. What does it mean that to see someone as a you is to see them without borders? What in the world does this mean? It's very poetic, right? What is he trying to say? There should be several perspectives on this. Sosa, go ahead.
I would say to see someone without borders is that you see them as more than just like, a human being. You see them as a soul. You see them as just, something that's very wide, that could be changed, that could be, just completely different, not just one compact thing is, oh, this is just the funny friend, this is just the smart friends. Like, no, you're a lot more than just, what you seem to be.
Okay, I love it, right? Let's write this down, right? So in other words, people can change. That's what Sosa is saying. To be a you means you're not stuck in an identity. You're not stuck as, right, the smart person or the sexy person or the pretty girl, right, or the rich guy, right? You're more, right? Now, what's interesting about this, and I do this at length in my other class, right, when we talk about at the Ethics of Love, we talk about the dimension of hope, right? When you realize that someone can always be more than what they are projecting right now, this is hope. Right? And this is the most profound act of love you can give that person, right? Realizing that you're not just a liar, you're not just a cheater, you're not just a narcissist. I'm so tired of these labels, right? The psychotherapy that we go through, I believe, is more destructive than constructive, right? When we diagnose somebody as a narcissist or as an abuser or as a cheater, we are putting a border. Right? Anytime you lose hope that that person can be more than what they have manifested so far, right? In a way, you are putting a border. So that's, by the way, I was listening today to a commentary on the debate last night, which I hope you all had the pleasure of watching. I'm being sarcastic. There's and it was quoted, Maya Angelou was quoted on the thing I was watching, where she says, when someone reveals who they are, right? I'm typing it up for you. Believe them, right? It's very profound saying, right? When someone reveals who they are, believe them. In other words, right? Don't think they're going to be anything else, right? So Buber might disagree with Maya Angelou, right? Sometimes what we reveal is not everything that we are, and the ability to see the hidden potentialities of a human being is to see them as a you. Make sure you write this down, right? This is very important. This is going to be important for your love lives, right? Sometimes the way someone reveals themselves is not completely who they are. That's what Buber is saying. There are always hidden potentialities for the good within every person. And to see that, to discipline oneself, to see that everyone is always more than what they reveal, or what we think they are, is to see them as a you, right? Very good. Okay, couple more. Coco and then Cosmitis.
Okay, well, let's start the argument, I suppose, right, of the day. But I don't, here's what I understand, like, the whole psychology thing you mentioned earlier about the whole, I don't think it's that we see them as just X or just Y. It's that part is still the truth. Like, someone who's an abuser, can they be a better person? Can they do better? Can they strive to be better? I believe on every my core of my principle believes yes, but that does not take away that they are that if they are that.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not, like, just, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to fight between the two extremes of only look at them at this,
yes,
or just say.
I like the way you're saying it. Maybe I would formulate it differently, right? They did this, but doesn't mean they are this. You see what I mean? In other words, they have behaved abusively, but it doesn't necessarily make them an abuser, right? They're much more than an abuser. So I guess I would word it different, but I agree. They have acted like this. We have to be lucid, right? And not close our eyes. Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
And then, and yes, but yes, they can improve. They can be better. I say this as someone who has screwed up in the past and has improved. I
Very
say that,
good.
you know?
Yes, excellent. So that's the idea, right? Absolutely. Very good. Cosmidis and then Osorio.
Yeah, kind of along the same vein, sort of. I read this post on Instagram about how like cancel culture and what's going on right now like doesn't work because one of the main things of like taking accountability that cancel culture kind of doesn't promote is accepting that people change, because one thing is that like people will dig up like old tweets or like dig up things that people said 10 years ago and be like, apologize for this. And the person will apologize and be like, I'm so sorry. That was, you know, I didn't know any better. And they'll prove that they've changed and done different. But it's like, you're always the person who said that. Doesn't matter that you've changed, doesn't matter. So that's an issue a lot of the times with the cancel culture that's going on right now is no, but 10 years ago you said this, and it doesn't matter if you've changed yourself. So yeah, it is something that you kind of have to be willing to accept that people change. And of course, yeah, take accountability. I'm not saying like, you know, I agree with Coco and I agree with the whole situation of like, take accountability. Don't just forgive someone for nothing. Don't just like brush it past, you know, whatever. People change, it's different. But really, if somebody shows you that they've changed and if somebody puts in that effort and goes, you know, I've learned from my mistake, I think that is important. Yeah.
Very good observation, right? On cancel culture, we reduce people to some action, right? And that's who they are, right? And we are not able to see past that, right? Very good. Let's see, Osorio, Kogan. First Osorio and then Kogan. Go ahead.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just what I think he's trying to say. Like, is it that he's advocating for like the complexity of humans? Like, we tend to limit their being into these little categories that we put them in, when in reality they are much more complex and diverse in who they are than we like to think, and that by viewing them as a you instead of an it, we actually understand the true nature of what it is to be human and the true complexity of it, instead of trying to limit them and make them smaller and make it like, you know, all uniform. Every human is like this type of person and this type of person, instead of like much more complex and complicated than.
You got it, 100%. That's perfect. I have nothing to add. Kogan.
Well, just kind of touching on what Cosmidis said about cancel culture, that we just 2 days ago was Yom Kippur, which is a holiday that's very big on the whole concept of repentance, you know, saying you're sorry and so on and so forth, but really more focusing on repentance, which is different than saying you're sorry. Because when you say you're sorry, you know, okay, that's it, those are just words, but repentance is sort of like this introspection and you know, going out and saying that, you know, you'll be better. But it is important to sort of place this label upon yourself, and that is something that's kind of done, of saying, you know, these are the kind of this is the kind of person that I was, and this is the kind of person that I want to be, which again sort of touches on you said something about psychotherapy, which there is a big part, a big aspect in psychotherapy about the issue of labeling theory. On there was this one experiment done. It was called the Rosenhan experiment, I'm pretty sure, where this experimenter told his students to go admit themselves to a mental hospital saying that they had schizophrenia, and then they went to the hospital. These were completely mentally healthy people, and they admitted themselves to mental hospitals claiming they had schizophrenia. And he told them, now that you've admitted yourself and told them that you have schizophrenia, act normally, act like you normally would. And then he came to the hospital a couple days later, and he was told that those people, like 8 out of the 12 students that went, were immense schizophrenics. They had intense schizophrenia. And he told them, no, these are my students. And he took them and he said, just so you know, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be sending 40 more students in here to be for this experiment. And when he came in a couple of weeks later, they told him, oh yeah, out of the 40 people that you sent, we already sent 25 of them home. They have no symptoms, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I didn't send anyone. But that being said, so there is that issue with labeling theory of this concept that labeling is bad because it can sort of enforce the stereotypes of the labeling. But what could be even worse is if you do have a problem and because of this fear of being labeled, you're not labeled and you can't fix it. So there is an importance on labeling, but I think the issue is that we are very quick to label and very quick to judge people, which sort of goes back to the whole idea of cancel culture, that we see people as a thing, as a label.
So yeah, Kogan, this you're reminding me of Coco a little bit, right? I think it's important to distinguish between who we are and what we do. I think that's what Buber is saying, right? And Yom Kippur emphasizes the actions. Interestingly, doesn't say you are a murderer. It says you murdered, right?
Yeah,
so this is important because our actions, yes, we have to identify the bad actions we do and change the actions, but ourselves is more than these actions. That's the idea here. As soon as you label someone, you can label actions, but you can't label a person. That's the idea here, right? I think. Okay, one more, and it's going to be Parillo.
I just wanted to talk about the "you has no borders" thing and like kind of my interpretation of it, which is super similar to like the way that everyone interpreted it. But like when I think of borders, I kind of think of like clear separations. Like I almost think of countries and the fact that we have borders, right? So to say instead that "you has no borders" to me is like this very clear like distinction of like we're not going to separate ourselves from the other, and like to say that there is no borders between the you and yourself is almost like to say that we're one and the same, which was my interpretation. So like the you could very easily be myself.
Very good. I've never seen it like that, but I think it works. And especially when we get into African philosophy, we're going to see how the you and the I are not separate at all, right? They are two of the same being, right? So and Buber also goes in that direction, that there is no true separation between me and the other. Whatever happens to the other happens to me. How I see the other, it says something about who I am, right? So we're going to talk about this in a second. But very nice, Parillo. I like that. Let me just ask Kang one more, just for Kang, and then we can move on. Kang.
Oh, I thought you were only taking one more. Well, I just wanted to add some final comments on like what Coco, Cosmides, and you were saying about cancel culture, about labels in therapy. It almost seems like accountability is only possible when you don't have those labels. Like it wouldn't make sense to label someone a narcissist and then demand that they apologize, because if they actually like can't, if they are simply a narcissist and can't make those decisions to feel empathy, to apologize, then yeah, it doesn't make sense to ask for accountability or forgiveness or justice.
Very nice, Kang. Very nicely said. Absolutely. If you are this, that's it. You can't change. You shouldn't be asked to change, right? Which is why Buber wants to emphasize the difference, right? Okay, very good. Okay, I will add a couple more thoughts that you guys haven't spoken, right? Any type of stereotypes, right? Whether they're racist or sexist or, anytime you say, anytime you group someone, right? Categorize them, stereotype them. you are sinning against the you, right? You're missing the you. Anytime you say something like women or, you know, black people or white people, right? And then make everyone the same, right? You are again losing the you, right? Very good. Excellent. Okay. We can say, so the text is so rich. You see how Buber, you can dig and dig and dig and dig, right? There's so much to say. But let me make, let me bring us now to his method, because what we've just done is going to clarify something very profound about how he philosophizes, right? What we're noticing is that the you here is only visible through a certain type of behavior. Make sure you write this down. This is key. Right? In other words, you don't conceptualize the you, right? You don't figure it out in your head, right? You, in a way, the you is only accessible when you act a certain way towards a person, boom, you reveal the you. You manifest the you through your actions, not through your thoughts. This is his method. In other words, if you want to know the you, right? He's not going to give you a portrait in his text. He's going to say, act a certain way towards people, and you will see it. If you don't act that way, you will not see it. You'll miss it, right? In other words, this is completely different from what we're used to as Westerners. As Westerners, we're used to doing, philosophy in the sense that, you know, I can have, like Descartes said, a clear and distinct idea of the thing that I'm talking about, right? We're thinking, our mind is filled with thoughts, and we know what something is based on our thinking or what we see, right? This is interesting. In other words, I'm walking around and I see, and therefore I know. Buber is saying, no, you do, and therefore you know. Okay, make sure you write this distinction. This is where Buber is profoundly Jewish and not Western at all. Western thought, following in the footsteps of Greek thought, is dominated by the sight. What I see, what I grasp, what I can intellectualize and conceptualize is what I will know. This is typical Western, scientific Greek. Buber now is profoundly Jewish when he says, no, it's not what I see which gives me knowledge, it's how I act which gives me knowledge. In other words, we are talking here about an embodied rationality. I'm writing it down for you, embodied rationality. This is a way of seeing with the body, right? Not with the mind. You are acting a certain way. In other words, you're not using, you're not stereotyping, right? You're not discarding. These are actions, right? You are not losing hope. That's right? Again, that's an action. That's not a concept, right? And as you act in this way, you are now coming into contact. You are seeing, you are encountering the you in a way that you cannot encounter or ever see or have revealed to you if you don't do these things, right? Are you all understanding this distinction? It's very important. Put your hand in the screen if you're following what I'm saying. Okay, just to quick fun fact, right? The Hebrew intelligence is an embodied rationality. This was already attested in the Hebrew Bible by a very interesting passage, which is mistranslated, which is why many people miss it. When the Hebrews received the law from Mount Sinai, most of you are familiar with the story, right? They're in front of this mountain, God appears, gives them the law, right? It's interesting that the Hebrews, the translation of the text from the Hebrew in English, for example, says, okay, we will understand what you said, and then we will do it, right? They promise this. So that's what the translation will say. The actual Hebrew is, we will do, and then we will understand. It's very interesting. You do, and then you understand. You act it out, and then it makes sense, right? This is the you. The I-you relationship is on, the you will only be visible to you, manifest to you, revealed to you if you act a certain way towards it. You are the one who, through your actions, are revealing the you. You can see here that we're doing phenomenology, right? If you know Husserl, which we'll talk about later, but not in a conceptual way, not in an intellectual way, in an embodied way. I don't want to mess you up with phenomenology. Phenomenology is how things appear, is the philosophy of how things appear, right? And with Kant, we learned that things appear when, okay, I didn't tell you this, but for Kant, right, things appear when you're hit with sensations and then you have a concept. Whatever, this is the classic way, right? I'm hit with sensations, my brain figures it out, and boom, I see a computer, right? Okay, Buber is now doing phenomenology, but of the body. The body is the one revealing the thing, right, through the action. So this is really something new, which we will see again in Levinas. And we see also in Gabriel Marcel, for example. This is a different way of thinking. It's a way of thinking which is mediated by the body, not by the mind anymore. So that's really important aspect, right, of his philosophy. Any questions on the way he does phenomenology, right? The way he does epistemology, right? The way he encounters reality. Any questions so far? Okay.
Can you talk again about the distinction between the body instead of the mind?
Okay, very good. Yes, let me clarify this phenomenology thing, right? In Western thought, in philosophy, if you take any epistemology class, right, about how we know, right, how we know about the world, they will all mostly tell you the same thing. It's always the same litany, right? We are hit with sensations, right? So I'm sensing, for example, if I'm touching my computer, it feels a little hard, it's square, it's kind of cold. Okay, then my brain is synthesizing this in for these sensations, and boom, it decides, right, in my brain, computer, right? So we encounter reality in Western thought with our mind. We see and we understand, this is this is that, this is this is that, right? Your mind, all your concepts are cutting up reality. This is Kant, by the way, right? In the Critique of Pure Reason, he says basically this: our mind are like little cookie cutters, right? Conceptualizing reality. So in Western thought, in also phenomenology, which Husserl, right, after Kant, which we'll talk about when we do Levinas at length, right? It's always the same idea, right? We receive sensations and we categorize and conceptualize what we have sensed, right? Now, Buber is saying, no, there's another way of knowing. When it comes to the human being, we cannot know like an object. The pencil, I can go around being like, okay, sense perception, okay, I feel something long and it's kind of cold, and it's a pencil, right? With Buber says, when it comes to human beings, we have to approach them differently. We approach them with the body. And so we reveal them through our actions, not through our concepts. So the rationality now is not conceptual, it's embodied. The way you act is revealing the you in that person. Does that answer your question, Osorio?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Kim and then Coco.
Sorry if this is a little bit off topic, but just out of curiosity, I know Buber was Jewish, but he talks about Jesus on page 66. Just wondering why did he believe in Jesus, or why did he bring up Jesus?
No, he didn't believe in Jesus, but I think certainly he was intelligent enough to be intrigued by him. One of the, I think, really unfortunate things, tendencies, right, in the Jewish community is to be closed off, right, to this whole literature, which is the literature of the New Testament, which is, by the way, Jewish, right? And it's sad. And Buber, in a way, is able to transcend these borders, right? If you're going to really be about the IU, you have to be capable of that. So he is intrigued, right? And he's not afraid to talk about it. But no, he doesn't believe that Jesus, has any type of, messianic. But he's intelligent enough, in my view, to be intrigued and interested in the topic. Does that answer your question, Kim?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Coco, you had one more thing to say? Coco? Okay, Coco. All right. Very good. All right. Let's get into now, last point I want to make now, and this has to do with what Parillo said earlier, this lack of borders between me and the you. And this is found in quote on page 80. So turn there with me. Page 80. This is very, very beautiful moment in the text on the top of page 80. Let me make sure all of you are here. Are you here? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. Man, I had a better one. I had a better quote. That's so sad. I had a better quote. I'll find it later, but okay, we'll just read that. Okay, top of page 80. Man becomes an I through a you. Okay, now this is, there's other quotes that say that in the text, better ones that I can't find right now, right? But this, I want to stop on this a little bit because this goes back to what Perillo said. Man becomes an I through a you. What does this mean, that man becomes an, okay, Cosmidis, go ahead.
Oh, I think I know what quote maybe you were
Yes,
looking for.
No, where are they?
Is it 62, the you encounters me by grace, and then
Yeah,
underneath it, yeah, I require.
That's it. Thank you, Cosmidis. Okay, guys.
Because I saw it and I was like, oh, that's a good quote.
That's the one we did in the other class too.
Yeah.
So, okay, and I couldn't find it. Okay, guys, go to page 62 also. Put your hand on the screen when you're there. The last sentence of that first paragraph, same idea. I require a you to become. Becoming I say you. Okay, now let's see if we can interpret those two passages, which are saying the same thing. What is he saying through these kind of enigmatic tongue twisters? Right, what's he saying? It's harder now, eh? Perillo, you should help us out. This was your idea. Okay, King, go ahead.
The line sounds very familiar to when physicists describe the universe in saying that the universe exists because we exist to say that it does. And this is literal in the sense that if we weren't here to say to create the word, then the word wouldn't exist. And in a sense, the universe wouldn't exist because we wouldn't be there to look at it and see if it's real or not, because then we just wouldn't be there, right? But to take away to take focus from the individual meaning from that phrase and apply it here, we wouldn't be able to define ourselves if the words or the other people who weren't ourselves existed, so that we could put action towards them and thereby define ourselves. Because according to Buber, actions define who we are. If people don't exist, then we wouldn't have any actions to, to make.
Very good, nicely put. I would just change, be careful. One thing, there's no definition, neither of the you nor of the I, right? Be careful when you define, what are you doing? You're putting a border, defining, right? So careful with the language, but you got the idea, right? If we are through our actions, if we are, I would say built, right? If we are built through our actions and there are no actions, who are we? Right? So this, I like very much what you said, Kang. I hadn't thought of it like that, right? That in a way, the way we act through the way we act towards another builds our identity, builds who we are. So what you're doing, in a way, is contributing to who you are, which is, of course, always more than your actions, right? Very good. I like that a lot. There was another hand that disappeared. Who were you? Or anyone else want to try to understand this passage, right? Let me read it again, right? I require a you to become. In other words, I can't become me unless there is a you in front of me. What does this mean? Right? I become an I when I say you. What does this mean that I become an I when I say you? What does this tell you about people who only address the world as it's, including human beings? Right? Okay, so there's 3 of you. So let's see, Saint-Just and then Kang.
There was just a part that stopped me. whole the you encounters me by grace, it cannot be found by seeking. I feel like that's kind of what you were just saying with you can't put a label on someone. Like you can't go saying like you are this, like the person has to reveal themselves to you and show you who they are. And then the only other part was oh, you can call on someone else. Just that part for one.
Okay, good. Yes, yes. I wasn't going to talk about that passage, but this is one of my favorite passages, right, in the text, undoubtedly, right? Kang, add to what, let's see what you have to say, if you can help.
Oh, well, I have 2 points. The first, I was just gonna say, like just basically how we're born into this world, and we can't survive or develop any kind of identity or culture if we don't have contact with our parents and other people. And the next point was, it made me think of like solitary confinement, which I know is there's a big push to end that for once and for all now. Like we've seen not only from real survivors, but like portrayed in media, just like the sheer terror of not having another mind to confirm your reality for you.
Yeah.
Like that really messes people up if they've been in solitary for too long. So
yeah, very good. There's actually, if you want to stay after class, there's a whole book written on, or at least a paper based on the philosophy of Levinas, which we'll study later, which addresses the problem of solitary confinement as not can't say that word, as not being a remedy, right? But as making things worse, right? So there's a very well-known philosopher who is a Levinas scholar who wrote a really good paper on that, proving that solitary confinement actually damages the person morally rather than helps them become a better person, right? Very good. Yes, you guys are getting it. Let's see. Perez, see if you can add anything.
Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
If you defined by Buber meaning that it's basically like in order to see someone as a you can't see them as a function of something or of some sort, very similar to what Marcel would say in the ontological mystery. And I would also say that basically saying that if, like, in order for me to understand who I am, or in order for me to become a you as a you, I have to see someone else as a you. Therefore, in order for me to have a relationship with myself, I have to first understand and have a relationship with someone else.
Yeah, very good, right? In other words, what we're saying is that we cannot rise to our true I, to our true humanity, unless we have raised the other to their true humanity. Let me say that again, because this is so important, right? We cannot raise ourselves to our true humanity, to our true I, unless we have elevated the person we're with to their true humanity and their true I, which is why, for example, in the case of racism, right? We say, we have to end racism. Yes, why? And people say we have to end racism for the victims of racism. I would suggest not only for the victims of racism, but for the perpetrators who are also losing their own humanity, right? And to this, since we have a little time, I want to bring up this notion. Actually, let me wait till we get to African philosophy to do that, because we're going to talk about that actually in African philosophy, but you can already look it up, right? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, led by Desmond Tutu and Mandela in South Africa, had this idea of not only redeeming the Black African, but also the white African, right? Because as long as you oppress, you are yourself losing a part of your own humanity, right? So the redemption is for both, right? And this is, I think, one of the greatest incentives to end racism in a given country, is to help people see that the racism doesn't just damage the people they are racist against, it damages them, right? Once you realize that your racism is not to your benefit, that you are damaging yourself as you're engaging in this kind of either xenophobic or racist or sexist behavior, you're losing yourself, right? And if people would just understand this, I think this would be one big step, right? Cosmides, please tell us more about Frederick Douglass. I'm curious now.
I think I might be wrong, but I feel like I remember this was a few semesters ago. I was reading something that there was an argument, I think, that Frederick Douglass had made that in order to appeal to like the white people who, you know, were still kind of into slave owning, he was like, hey, racism harms you too, you know, you shouldn't do that. It makes you a bad person to be a racist, that you could treat somebody like that. That doesn't feel good for you, you know, like, and he really was trying to appeal to people's like sense of humanity in a way, but not even towards the slaves, but towards themselves. And like, look at yourself, look at how aggressive you are, look at how angry you are. That doesn't feel good. So that was, I believe that was Frederick Douglass, or just someone who was like in his team of people when they were campaigning, but I believe I read that it was Frederick Douglass. It was a few semesters ago.
And I would give you extra credit if you find me that quote.
Sounds good.
Yes, or whoever else, right? Whoever else wants to look up anything in the theory of race, by the way, I'm interested, right? Whether it's Du Bois or Frederick Douglass or any of those writers, they must have, right? There must have, this argument must have come up a lot. And I'm interested in anyone who said this, right? With regards to race, I'm intrigued, right? Because this is very important. What I'm witnessing in this country is a kind of approach that racism is helpful for me somehow, right? Me being racist, you know, then I'm strong and I'm, you know, a patriot or whatever, right? And I'm protecting my community and my territory. Yeah, no, right? Buber would argue, you're not protecting, you're disintegrating something essential about your own humanity, right? When you engage in that. So this is, I think, a very important argument to bear in mind, that it's not that any type of racism or sexism or anti-Semitism, right, is damaging also to the one who does it, right? Because you cannot become a true I unless you're capable of facing a true you. To be only surrounded by it, right? If everyone around you is just, you know, catering to you, and no one has the status of a you in your life, you're not a true I, right? And this is why perhaps, you know, we have, let me not go there, okay. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Very good. Okay, any questions about anything? King, is that a question or is that an old question? Okay. Any questions? All right. Kim, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm always going off topic, but in the process of writing the test, I came across something that said that Kant was actually a racist, like he was a blatant racist. And I know we had talked about him being against slavery, but do you have any kind of insight into that?
Sure, he was also a sexist. He used to say that he would never explain his philosophy to women because they couldn't understand it. So I'm laughing now, but so yeah. Again, right? This is an issue with a lot of philosophers, right? And some, we have the cancel culture also in the philosophical circles, right? Some people have canceled Heidegger, right? Heidegger hasn't been taught for several reasons. One being his blatant participation in the Nazi party, right? Aristotle is also often canceled, right? Kant now is in danger, right? So there are two, I think I mentioned this, there are two attitudes, right, that people take. One, they realize, well, if he's like that, then he has nothing to teach me. His philosophy will be somewhere flawed and will have blind spots, and that's true, right? Kant has blind spots, we know that already. So they say, well, I'm not gonna take this person seriously, and they cancel them. The other approach is maybe a more Buberian approach that, okay, they said this, but their philosophy what's the word? And is greater than them. Some people actually argue that the philosopher is greater than the philosophy, is greater than the person, and we shouldn't discard the work of art or the philosophy or the book, right? Because of the person, right? The art always transcends the person. So I'm a little in between. I think they will have blind spots, right? If you are a person who has blind spots, your philosophy will have blind spots. Nevertheless, there are still things in your philosophy which are true, right? So I would take it like that, but you have to make your own choice. But yes, I'm not surprised that Kant would be racist, since he was also sexist, right? Yet his philosophy, in my view, paves the way for the end of racism. I think the way he writes it, right? Many times the philosophers are not even aware of what they're writing, how the writing, their own writing, judges them, right? Does that answer you a little bit, Kim?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, good. Let me read some of your comments. When you don't view everyone as human, then your philosophies doesn't apply. Yeah, absolutely, right? I do think that if you have a blind spot in your humanity, there's going to be blind spots in your philosophy, right? But there are still elements in that philosophy which I would want to learn, right? Nevertheless, even though I would remain aware of the blind spots, right? Cosmidis, you want to add?
I don't think I've actually wrote down where I found that thing about Frederick Douglass necessarily. Like, I didn't find the specific example, but I did find in his writing where he talks about like the deep hypocrisy from like Christians in the South who were slave owners. And like, it's like a quote from him where he says, "The man who wields the blood-clotted cowskin during the week fills the pulpit on Sunday and claims to be a minister of the meek and lowly Jesus. He who sells my sister for purposes of prostitution stands forth as the pious advocate of purity. He who proclaims it a religious duty to read the Bible denies me the right of learning to read the name of the God who made me. He who is the religious advocate of marriage robs the whole millions of its sacred influence. The warm defender of the sacredness of the family relation is the same that scatters whole families. We see the thief preaching against theft and the adulterer against adultery."
Yeah, let me add to that list. There's one that's been weighing on my heart. People who are against abortion, but who are perfectly fine with us going to war. Pro-life means pro-life, right? If you're going to be pro-life, you got to be consistent. This is my own personal grudge.
You have to care about what happens to that child once it leaves the womb, too.
Here's my personal view on abortion, right? If we're going to be pro-life, that's fine. But we need to create a safety net and for those mothers that we want them to give birth so that they can raise their children, right? We have to be pro-life all the way, not just, you know, at the moment of conception. We have to be, as a society, if we're going to be pro-life, all the way. Take the responsibility for that life, right? But that's just me. Good. Now I'm on YouTube saying this. All right, very good. Any other comments before we conclude? All right, excellent. Okay, so great. All right, so next time we'll be focusing on pages 88 to 122, where he's talking about actually much more concrete things, which has to do with change in society, the possibility of a political transformation. He's going to also offer a criticism of capitalism and socialism, like we talked about before. So it's going to be a much more political, right, chapter. And then the last chapter will be a much more mystical one, right? So, all right. So I guess, when do I see you again? Somebody tell me what day. We are Wednesday. So do we have class on Monday?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Monday.
Okay, very good. So I will see you all Monday. If you still have questions about your paper, you can come tomorrow at 6 and we can look at it together. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording.